The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 200!
Woohoo! I think we've done rather well so far, haven't you?
More by luck than by judgment, if you ask me.
Hey, you're not going to regenerate again, are you?
I don't know what's going to happen.
I'm Pretty Boy. Yes. Pretty?
Hello, Stonehead!
Actually, I think I may have gone a little too far.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing, for our 200th episode celebration, a special topic, our 10 essential stories of Doctor Who. And we'll get into what that means in a second, but first, joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy.
And Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
And we should remember those that who used to be with us at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Father Roderick and Stephanie Week. They were both with us as we began the podcast, and they've since moved on.
Yeah, I listened to episode 1, and it was kind of funny to listen to. First of all, because we have kind of evolved our format over the time, but like we didn't know who Missy was yet. We didn't know how Peter Capaldi's doctor would turn out.
Yep.
It was just kind of funny to listen to all these things that we didn't know then that we were speculating on and going, was it Missy what was one of the things that we thought she was? Another Time Lord, like the Ronnie, and things like that. It's like, and then it was just kind of snuck in. Well, there's a possibility she could be the Master, maybe.
Maybe. So we started 6 years ago with the very first episode of Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. Deep Breath, was it?
Yep.
And we've gone ever since. In the beginning, we only were doing new episodes where we covered and the new seasons, the 12th Doctor stuff, and then eventually we decided we're having so much fun, and I haven't watched the old stuff. We should start doing all the Doctor Who and going back through all of it. And so we've been doing that for the past several years, and it's been great ever since. This time we decided that we're going to do a little different from our usual episode review. We're going to talk about our top 10 essential stories for Doctor Who. And this is, if you were going to introduce Doctor Who to someone new, what shows would you recommend? Which episodes? And we're not going to just do single episodes because, of course, in the early days of Doctor Who, it was a one story covered 2, 4, 10 separate episodes. War Games, I'm looking at you. And
don't forget the Daleks master plan. That's even longer.
Oh my gosh, we haven't got to that yet.
And if you want to be really picky, you could say Trial of the Time Lord, which was an entire season.
Right.
Yes, that's true. That's
4
true.
serials, but it was the whole story over the entire season.
Right. And so we're gonna kind of lump things together, and I think we could lump even a New Who, like 2-parters together that obviously go together. That would be fine too. So we're gonna talk about that now. Again, as regular listeners know, my exposure to Classic Who is limited. I'm still watching them, but you both are much more familiar with all of Classic Who, so your lists will definitely be different from mine. The only Classic Who stuff on mine is going to be stuff I've already seen. So we're going to go through it one by one and each throw out one that we think should be on the list and talk a little bit about it. And there'll obviously be overlap. That's for sure. But as the host, I'm going to take privilege and go first. I'll be rude like that and just throw out the one that I think we should definitely start with, which is, I'm not going to go back to the first Doctor's first episode. I'm going to go to the second serial, The Daleks, which is the first real Doctor adventure that feels like what we think of as when we think of Doctor Who, because they're going to another time, another planet. It's the Daleks, the introduction of Daleks. And you even see the Doctor's machinations at work, the way he works his plans. So I'm going to say the first one on our list should be the Daleks from the first Doctor's first season. Anyone agree, disagree? Is this on your list too?
It's not on my list, but I think it's a good choice.
Spoilers, sweetie.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's my first pick. So Jimmy, what's your first story you want to pick?
Well, I was in doing my homework for this. I noted an ambiguity in the phrasing of the question that was put to us in the what is an essential episode? Essential
Okay.
from what perspective? Because there's more than one perspective. It could be essential in terms of viewing enjoyment,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be essential in terms of what it did to build the mythology of the show.
Okay.
Like if you wanted to watch what are the key turning points in the history of the show and consider those the essential episodes, even if there are other episodes that you might watch more for fun. So for some of mine, especially in the first half of my list, I had two from the two different essential perspectives.
Okay.
So for my number 10 slot, I also have a bonus. But for my number 10 slot, I had the Daleks because
Okay.
because of its pivotal role in establishing the most popular antagonist. It
Yep.
also is the first visit an alien planet story.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, that's quite essential. Also at this level, though, if I'm thinking about what's from the first Doctor's era that I would want to watch just for fun, it's one we haven't watched as a group yet, The Web Planet.
Mm.
The Web Planet is one where the Doctor goes to another planet, and it's the Hartnell era at its absolute most ambitious. Because what they try to do in the Web Planet is establish an entire ecosystem with multiple insect races of different, like there's 2 sentient races and there's a third non-sentient race. And they're trying to have these people, these butterfly people and these ant people and these aphid-like people or creatures on a 1960s children's television show budget. And yes, it's as shaky. The effects are as shaky as anything. In fact, at one point, a giant ant bumps into the camera. But I just admire the ambition of that. I love trying to see them flesh out this entire ecosystem of a world for children, and I think it's great. So, from an enjoyment perspective, for the Hartnell era, I would have the Web Planet. Also, a bonus essential episode, which you alluded to, I had the first episode, An Unearthly Child. Not the rest with the cavemen stuff, because that's boring as tears. But the original very first episode, which introduces the Doctor and Susan and Ian and Barbara.
Okay. Father Cory, what's your first one?
Well, I was going to do an honorable mention of the first episode of Unearthly Child, but since Jimmy stole it from me, no.
Well, there's no stealing. There's no stealing. It's just picking.
Since he took 3 choices, no, I'm kidding. I'm just joking. I did initially took it like Jimmy's, where it was combination of what helped with the mythology of Doctor Who and what was more entertaining. And so my first choice, going with more the entertaining side, is City of Death, which is a 4th Doctor episode we haven't watched yet. And the reason why I picked that one is because it is extremely entertaining. It is probably the best example of the Douglas Adams episode.
Yeah.
So Douglas Adams wrote this episode under a pseudonym, because I think at the time he was also the
script editor.
Yeah.
Because he was for a couple of years under the 4th Doctor. And of course, if you've read Douglas Adams, if you've read Hitchhiker's Guide, you know he is a fantastic comedic sci-fi author.
What a marvelous butler. He's so violent.
Yeah, exactly. Tom Baker gets to be very much, kind of the physical slapstick type doctor. And it's such a great story. It's the one where, if you've seen the clip where John Cleese, and I can't remember who the actress is, they're sitting in this art museum looking at the TARDIS and talking about how absurd it is that's there. And it's through its absurdity, it's so wonderful. In the Doctor and
as a piece of art.
Yeah, as a piece of art. And the Doctor and Romana go running into the TARDIS and take off, and they're just like exquisite. That's where this comes from. It's
So
absolutely
John Cleese is in that episode?
Yes.
just this one little
Oh,
cameo. This
that
one
is
little cameo
awesome.
is there in the art museum staring at the TARDIS as an art piece. So it's if for the entertainment value alone, it is so worth uh watching it. But again, it's
Yeah,
an
okay.
example of Douglas Adams and the Tom Baker it is as comedic. So
Okay, awesome. That's a good one. My next one I'm going to pick is another introduction of a classic Doctor Who villain, and this is the Tomb of the Cybermen, which is another one we've watched. This is Second Doctor Patrick Troughton. So it's not the introduction of the Cybermen, of course. That was 10th Planet, but it's a real. I think it's a good realization of the Cybermen in their original incarnation. I really like because we also have the first time with the Cyber Controller, the first time with Cybermats, and you really get a sense of their villainy, their dangerousness. And the Second Doctor in this one is quirky, but he's also strong and he's also kind. There's that moment with Victoria, which Tomb of the Cybermen follows on from one we just watched, where Victoria joins the TARDIS for the first time. Where we watched what was it, the Evil of the Daleks?
Mm-hmm.
And so Victoria just joined them, and so in Tomb of the Cybermen, you get to see the Doctor consoling her for the loss of her father and the loss of time, where she's out of her time, and so that was really nice. And of course, it's Jamie because Jamie's really awesome, and I really always enjoy ones with Jamie. So that's my pick. Is Tomb of the Cybermen.
Cool.
Jimmy, what's your next one?
Well, in composing the list, I tried to think of something from every era of Doctor Who, and I didn't have one from every single Doctor.
Right.
Like there is no 6 on my list.
That's obvious.
But despite the pivotality of Trial of a Time Lord, there is no 6.
Yeah.
And then after I had my list, I went through and ranked them. And
Okay.
the rankings are more in terms of enjoyment level. So we're moving up in that regard, both in enjoyment and in time to the Second Doctor. And for plot essentiality, as a turning point in the series, I did the War Games, which is the 10-part series that led up to Patrick Troughton's regeneration, and it's the first introduction to the Time Lords. It's the very first time in the series that we learn about the Doctor's people. Previously, we have met the Doctor, Susan, and the meddling monk, and and in the course of the War Games, we also meet the War Master, and all of those are people we knew to belong to the Doctor's people. But we had never seen them in their home environment. We didn't know their name or anything like that. We didn't know what the relationship was really between them and the Doctor, other than that he'd left. And so we start getting answers in a big way. We learn who the Time Lords are. We learn about their non-interference policy. We learn the Doctor's been violating that. We get to see Gallifrey in a limited fashion for the first time when the Doctor is put on trial. The final episode of the War Games, now it's a 10-parter, so it kind of drags in places. A lot of it is really interesting. I think it could have been trimmed to maybe a 6-parter, and it would have been much tighter. But a lot of it is in these simulated environments where there are different war games going on from different periods in Earth's history, and then there's a sci-fi behind the scenes kind of thing going on in it. And then in the last episode, we get a really, really taut, dramatic introduction to the Time Lords, who do not come off as all bad. They actually kind of come off as, we're kind of regretting what we're having to do here, Doctor, but, we need to do this. And so it's an essential moment in the mythology of the show. In terms of enjoyment from the Patrick Troughton era, I picked the same one you did, Dom. I picked Tomb of the Cybermen. It's got a lot of great moments in it, including, just like a sight gag between the Doctor and Jamie. There's just a lot of fun in there.
Yep.
And a lot of creepy stuff, too. Real body horror with the Cybermen, and also the famous scene of them breaking out of their tombs.
Yes.
And a lot of nice stuff in that.
Great. Father Cory.
for the next one, I went to the first Doctor and I went with the 10th Planet. And of course, the reason for that one is introduction of the Cybermen, tying in with the Cybermen, but also, of course, the fact that that was the story that gave us regeneration. That was where we first saw this idea that the Doctor could have more than one face and personality, and of course, actor, because it allowed the series to survive for almost 60 years now because of this gift of regeneration, if you will. So it and it's not a bad episode on its own. The Cybermen definitely got a lot of development after, uh, one of which is being able to actually understand them when they speak. But
Yes.
I do not know why you do not like the Cybermen
Yeah,
voices
exactly.
from the first episode. Actually, I like those voices.
well, I like the idea of it where it's so inhuman of a
Right.
speech pattern. But it was hard to understand, especially understanding recording technology at the time.
Yeah.
The audio didn't come across very well.
The effect they put on him. Yeah.
And then, of course, like Jimmy talks about, you see the body horror of the Cybermen so much more clearly in that episode than you do maybe in later episodes. But again, it just the fact that it's such an essential aspect of Doctor Who that the Doctor can regenerate makes it worth watching.
So for my next one, this is going to be my last of the classic Who picks because, like I said, most of my experiences in New Who. But for this one, it's another Dalek episode, but it's because it's really good. And this is Genesis of the Daleks, Fourth Doctor, season 12. It's the origin story of the Daleks. Of course, it doesn't come chronologically first, but it's where did the Daleks come from? It's the first appearance of Davros. We see Skaros again. And what it really sets us apart is the Doctor's moral dilemma here about, do I wipe out the Daleks from their beginning, from their origin, and save the universe, but does the end justify the means? And that whole thing. And we're left with this moment as a fan of going, oh, if only he had connected those two wires, so much would have been different. Tom Baker, of course, is great as usual, and this it's that classic Doctor style where he's not invincible, he's not Time Lord victorious, he is fallible in many ways, and he has to succeed regardless of whatever weaknesses or obstacles he encounters. So Genesis the Daleks, that's my pick for the next one. Jimmy?
So, moving up my list to the number 8 slot, I have 2 from the Third Doctor's era. First, from the essentiality perspective, I have Spearhead from Space, which was the introduction of the Third Doctor and features him in post-regeneration trauma. And this is the very first color episode of the show, so it's essential from that perspective. There was a big shift in the way they made the show, transitioning it to color with the 1970s. It had been black and white all through the 60s. And it also introduces the Autons, who were a somewhat minor villain, but they do recur. And in particular, Spearhead from Space is the introduction. It's not the first appearance of Unit. Unit had already been in a couple of Patrick Troughton stories, but it's the beginning of the Unit era with the Doctor stuck on Earth, unable to use the TARDIS. And this went on for some time, so it's a significant era in the show's history. And as the introduction to that, I thought it was essential from that perspective to help you understand what's going on in this era. For enjoyment from the Jon Pertwee era, I have another story featuring the Autons, Terror of the Autons, which is also significant because it introduces the Master. And that makes it more enjoyable because we've got the Master. The Doctor in this one is not laying in a bed or in post-regeneration trauma. He's fully functioning. And so we get the introduction of the Holmes-Moriarty relationship between the Doctor and the Master. And that makes it more enjoyable as a watch, even though it's less essential from a certain point of view.
Yeah, I think the introduction of the Master does kind of qualify it as essential for if you want to just even know Doctor Who. So yeah, I agree with that one. Roger Delgado, of course. Okay, Father Cory, what's your next one?
Well, I'm going to say is ditto on both. No, Genesis Daleks again. Obviously, that is the Daleks, and again, it's also a good example of a Fourth Doctor story, because there's a couple of stories I picked that they're really not that good of stories. They just introduce some element that's important. But Genesis Daleks obviously is a great story. And then Terror of the Autons for bringing in the Master who's a character that recurs a lot, even though he's been dead, how many hundreds of times, but he still comes back.
Right.
But it's not a bad story and so on. Although I'm not the biggest fan of the Autons as a villain, and I'm kind of glad they faded away pretty quickly, only to come back for one of my choices later on. But as a fill-in villain, just to put something in there because they really weren't important to the story. But yeah, I mean, again, it's just the master, and Roger Delgado playing the master. He's still just one of the best.
So I'm gonna change it up, and I'm gonna I'm gonna put myself at the end of the rotation because I'm now all in new Who. So I'm gonna let kind of stick with the classic stuff that I think that Jimmy and Father Cory, you're gonna do. So Jimmy, what's your next pick?
At this point now, my first 3 picks were First Doctor, Second Doctor, and Third Doctor, but here we have a jump to the Seventh Doctor, Remembrance of the Daleks. Remembrance of the Daleks, which we recently watched as a group, is a very interesting film, a very interesting story. It's an anniversary one, so they're syncing back to 1963. In fact, the Seventh Doctor, and Ace go back to 1963, where the Doctor has left the Hand of Omega. So they're retconning events from an unearthly child. Apparently, the Doctor and Susan had brought this Time Lord device back there, and the Doctor had left it with an undertaker to be buried, but the burial hasn't been done yet, and now we see that, except now that the Doctor has met the Daleks, and the Daleks are interfering in 1963, he then crafts a plan where he does what he refused to do in Genesis of the Daleks and tricks Davros into blowing up Skaro. And this is clearly one of the most significant events in the Time War, in starting it. You blow up the Daleks on planet, they're going to retaliate. And so this is a very pivotal episode. It's also one of the most accessible stories from the Seventh Doctor era, both for the Doctor himself and for Ace in terms of character development. You get to see the Doctor not at his most Machiavellian. He actually gets more Machiavellian than this, but he is quite Machiavellian and scheming in this. And Ace, meanwhile, is confronting some hard realities because she falls in love with this guy, and he's not who she thinks he is, and he's actually quite disappointing to her as she confronts some hard realities about 1960s society. So it's a really enjoyable and well-done episode.
Father Cory?
So I'm gonna go, as I said, some of these episodes I picked, I think they've really added to the lore of Doctor Who, but they're really not that great of episodes. And the one I'm going to pick that fits that category is the Three Doctors. It's the first of the multi-Doctor stories. It's the first one where we have more than one regeneration of the Doctor in the same story at the same time. It's not, if I would have to rate the multi-Doctor stories, it's probably one of the better ones, but that's not saying much. It's certainly not saying much.
Certainly better than the Two Doctors.
Yeah, very much. Well, that's definitely not saying much either.
And the Five Doctors.
That's not hard.
Yeah.
But it's of the classic Who multi-Doctor stories, it's the best. I agree with you on that, Jimmy, definitely. It's also a story that really advanced the Time Lord mythology as well. The idea of Omega himself, that he was the one who created the Eye of Harmony, that became the power source that allowed and he was also one of the architects who helped the Time Lords discover time technology, time travel technology, and TARDISes, and all these things that are built into what are Time Lords. This set a lot of that down in the lore of Doctor Who in this one story. It was the 10th anniversary story. That's why it was the first multi-generational Doctor story. So it limps. It's kind of painful at times, but it does add a lot to the lore.
So do the bubble wrap monsters in it limp at times.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. So
we do in that one. Actually, it does have some quite significant elements in it. We also get to see Gallifrey for the second time.
Yep.
And we get a much better look at it than we did in the War Games. Yep. We get a much better handle on Time Lord society and how it works. Also, it ends the exile on Earth period for the Doctor, because In gratitude, they give the Doctor the use of the TARDIS back, and he gets to start traveling with Joe in space and time again.
Oh, okay. So but from our perspective, it's more than a season away from our watch of the Third Doctor. But
Yep.
that's
Yeah,
interesting.
we still got a ways to go for doing it as part of our rewatch, but
Excellent.
it's worth watching. Just don't cringe too hard while you're watching it.
So that's my turn. I'm now in New Who, and I'm going to pick my New Who ones. They're mostly in order, but not strictly necessarily. And my first one is going to be one I think we've all talked about before as one of our favorites. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm going essentials, and this is if you want to get a flavor from my point of view. My list is if you want to get a flavor of what is Doctor Who about, what is it like. That's where I'm coming from, and so that's why I picked Midnight, the 10th Doctor story.
Mhm.
It's a little different from other ones, but it's a really great example of what Doctor Who can be. It could be various things. It could be high adventure, running around, that sort of thing, action, or it can be very cerebral and almost like a stage play. And that's what Midnight feels like to me. It's a bottle show, as they say. It takes place mostly in one set, in fact. There's no companions, just the Doctor and some other people who are on this transport traveling on this planet. It's a unique idea of a place to visit. It's a planet that's completely deadly, even to look at. It's got tight writing and acting is good in it. There's high tension throughout. The Doctor is definitely not in control of the situation, and we never get the mystery unraveled. We end this episode with a mystery still in place.
We have dramatic resolution in that
Yes.
everybody is safe, but in terms
Right.
of what was that, we don't get
Yes.
the curtain pulled back.
Yeah, or even what exactly happened? What did he encounter? We don't. Yeah, I love that aspect of it. So I think Midnight is a great example of that type of Doctor Who story. If you're looking for it, so that's my next pick. Jimmy, what's your next one?
So moving up to number 6, I have my 5th Doctor entry, and I have 2 again from the 2 different perspectives. From the mechanical essentiality perspective, I have Earthshock,
Mm-hmm.
which is famous as ridding the universe of one of the greatest plagues upon it ever, and also setting up human evolution. So it's also a shameless ripoff of Alien and Aliens.
Yep.
The movies with Sigourney Weaver, and so it's actually pretty fun. In addition to being pivotal, but it's the most famous instance of a companion death in the history of Doctor Who. There have been other companion deaths, some of which have been reversed, some of which have not. This is one that, at least in terms of the TV show, has not been reversed, although in some of the spin-off media it has. But wow, it is played for drama.
Mm.
It is very dramatic the way it happens. And the serial actually ends with the death. So that's the climactic event. The Doctor and other surviving companions are so stunned at the end that they just played the credits roll with no soundtrack.
Right.
And a symbol of the loss. And so it is very, very dramatic and pivotal for that reason. Another one that's actually arguably as pivotal, but maybe not quite. It's not quite as famous from that perspective, but is considered one of the best written and often the best written classic Doctor Who serial, The Caves of Androzani, where the Doctor, Peter Davison's 5th Doctor, ends up sacrificing himself in order to save a companion and thus regenerating. And watching him, he actually suffers the fatal wound earlier than you would think, and he's staving off his regeneration. He's fighting against it in order to save everybody. And in the end, he's able to, it comes down to he needs to save both himself and his companion after everyone else is taken care of, and he can only save one of them, and he chooses his companion.
Right. Right.
This is also the key Robert Holmes entry that I have. Robert Holmes being considered one of the best writers in the history of the show.
Good choice. Good choice. Father Cory?
So I'm picking another story that does a lot of revealing the Time Lords, and this is where we get to see more of the political aspect of the Time Lords. I'm talking about Deadly Assassin. Deadly Assassin, another Fourth Doctor story. There was a lot of development of the Time Lords in the Third and Fourth Doctors, especially in the Tom Baker's era.
Yeah. We got 2 stories set entirely on Gallifrey.
Right, and this is one of them. And the idea is that the Doctor has a premonition that he's assassinating the Lord President, who is resigning and is naming his successor. Obviously, it's it's not by election, but it's by succession, apparently. But it shows us a lot of the culture of Gallifrey, a lot of the political structure of the Time Lords, a lot of that kind of thing. It's an interesting story. It's a master story, but it's the burned master. So it's the master between regenerations, basically.
The first burned master.
Yep, between Delgado and Anthony
Ainley.
I thought so. I couldn't remember for sure, but it's revealing a lot more about the Time Lords. We get to understand them better. Get to see some of some of the intrigue. You can see kind of the parliamentary intrigue and things like that. You can definitely tell it was based off more of a British style governance. Not a surprise, but yeah, it's worth watching again for that. And it's not a bad story. I don't think it's a bad story in my opinion, but it's definitely not one of the greatest. Oh, you must go out and watch this because it's very entertaining. Gets a little slow.
Especially in The Matrix. Anytime you have a holodeck in a show, it decreases my interest.
Yeah. and that's one of the big things it really introduces to us is the Matrix, what the Matrix is like. Of course, that comes back again and again and again, including up into the 13th Doctor. We see the Matrix.
That's right. All right, so that brings me to my next pick, and this is one we've just recently watched as we record this. Which is Vincent and the Doctor, the 11th Doctor story. I really love this episode because it does several things. It's a beautiful exposition of art and beauty, but also of suffering and the human condition. And that's another thing when Doctor Who's at its best. It's really exploring the human condition and these aspects of what it means. And it really brings it out by encountering an historical figure who can provide some of this insight that we get. And so and plus I love that final scene in the Musée d'Orsay with Vincent, and it's just so well done and so well acted and written, that final scene. So mine is going to be Vincent and the Doctor. That was my next one. Jimmy, what's your next pick?
Okay, in the number 5 slot, I'm covering the Tom Baker era, and from the 2 different perspectives, I have, in terms of essentiality, Genesis of the Daleks, because this does let us go back and see the origin of the Daleks. It's a great morality tale in that the Doctor, we see, this explicitly Nazi-like society and how it evolves, as well as the Doctor's moral struggle of, do I become like them if I fulfill my mission here and end them? It also is a quite enjoyable story, although as a 6-parter it drags. But if you want to understand the mythology of Doctor Who, understanding how the Daleks came to be is a key part of that. So it gets the essentiality ranking for this one. In terms of just something I would watch from the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker's era, more for fun, less because it's essential, but just for the enjoyment experience, I could have said City of Death. But I actually didn't think of that one. Instead, what I thought of was The Talons of Weng Chiang. This is one that we haven't watched as a group yet, but it takes the Doctor and Leela to 19th century London, where there are a series of murders that are occurring, somewhat like Jack the Ripper, but not Jack the Ripper. And we get into the world of theater, and it turns out there's interference from like the 40th century happening. And there's a homunculus with a pig brain, and it's very Conan Doyle, very H. Rider Haggard, very Jules Verne kind of story, and really has a lot of the feel of the period.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, that should be coming up for us not too long, or actually a little bit. But okay, I guess that Father Cory, that brings it to you.
So I mean, this would be my last classic Who choice. But
Mhm.
and the reason why I picked it as my last classic Who choice is because it's the last classic Who episode, Survival.
Hmm.
Seventh Doctor. It was the last episode before it went into hiatus. It wasn't originally intended to be that. So it doesn't have a conclusion. It's not like they had just big ending episode. It was the end of a season. And it's got the master. They're on this planet where the people over time turn into cats, basically. They turn into cat people, including the master is infected by this.
And Ace.
And Ace, yep. Although she's able to fight it off actually a little better than the master is. He's almost welcoming it. He's almost just coming to it willingly. It really is an interesting episode, but it's interesting again because it was the final episode before Classic Who went into hiatus. They kind of slapped a little ending there where the doctor's talking about, somewhere the T's on, let's go, Ace, we got places to be. And that's literally last time the doctor's on TV until 1996 with the Doctor Who movie.
Hmm.
It's one of those, of course, I remember when it came out that it was just such a shock of, that's it? There's no like ending to the series. It's just going to go in hiatus. And of course, that's something that really drove fans nuts was the series never was canceled. It was always put on hiatus or sometime later.
Right.
And of course, that later didn't come until 96. And then, of course, 2005.
16 years. Yeah.
I consider it essential because it's kind of essential to see where did the show cut off? Where did the show kind of end with a lot of questions more than answers? So,
Well, I'm glad you picked that one because my pick is going to be the where it picked up again, not in 1996, but in 2005, where we have the Ninth Doctor in Rose. This is not the greatest episode of Doctor Who, not even my top 10, but it's
You,
I
you
feel
didn't,
it's like
you didn't like the plastic Mickey in it?
yeah, yeah, right. Everybody needs a plastic Mickey. No, this one it's essential because it really sets the stage for New Who. This is what to expect.
Mhm.
Because especially for those of you who are fans of the classic Who at the time, what is this new thing going to be like? You kind of get a hint from the 96 movie that if it comes back, it might be different from what we remembered. But this really changes the show. The pacing is different. The stories are somewhat different. Well, they're usually one single 40-minute episode, and we get a new Doctor, a new companion. We've got the TARDIS, which looks very different inside, and so it really sets the stage for what New Who has become, and the stamp that Russell T Davies put upon it, and also the Ninth Doctor put upon it. I mean, that this is really everything grew out of this seed of Rose. So that was my next pick. Jimmy, what's your next two picks?
So, moving up into the top four, I move up into the New Who era, and all of my top four are from the New Who era, and not a lot significant to the mythology of the show has happened in the New Who era. The most significant thing is the Timeless Child, but
Right.
that's so really peripheral to the character of the show, and it hasn't been exploited in any significant way yet and may never be. It's just, oh, guess what? There were more regenerations than we knew about. It's too minor to me to rank that for essentiality. So I have no essentiality rankings for the top four slots. They're all just based on enjoyment.
Okay.
So these are the four things that I would and have shown to people sitting them down to watch Doctor Who for the first time. If they know nothing else about the series, these top four slots are what I would show them and have showed them. And I didn't have I find your previous choice interesting, Dom.
Mhm.
Rose as a bridge for fans of the old show to this is what it's going to be like. If you're not a fan of the show, you can just drop in to the new show because it's like modern contemporary television. I wouldn't drop a newcomer into Classic Who because television was so different back then. But for just introducing someone, not the first thing I'd show them because this is still the number 4 slot, but one of the things I would show them is the 11th Doctor Christmas special, A Christmas Carol. I really enjoy this. It's a lot of fun. It's got Matt Smith. It takes the classic Christmas Story, which I actually don't like. I don't like Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I mean, I appreciate certain aspects of it, and as a morality tale, it's fine. It just has nothing to do with Christmas.
Right.
In fact, it's kind of like a bunch of Doctor Who Christmas specials. It has nothing to do with Christmas, except it happens to occur at Christmas time.
That's true.
But what I love here is it takes the familiar tropes from A Christmas Carol with the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, and does them through time travel.
Right.
And especially the final twist where the Doctor reveals Kazdan Sardak's future self to his younger self as the ghost of Christmas future. It's just really moving. And then you have comedy, you have fear, you have romance, you've got all kinds of stuff going on. You have love, you have loss, is a prominent theme in this. And it's really a very satisfying watch. And despite the fact I don't like I'm not a fan of the source material, I am a fan of this presentation of it.
Yeah. I'm glad we've already done that one past Christmas. I forget when we did it, but that's one of my favorite Christmas specials too. I really enjoy that, and the lovely singing by the actress. I can't remember her name now, but she's got a beautiful voice, and her singing in it is just fantastic. So that makes it really great for me too.
Maybe we can start calling them winter solstice specials instead of Christmas specials.
Yes. All right, Father Cory, what's your next one?
So I am going to, I said I'm moving out of Classic Who, but I am going to pick the 96 movie.
Okay.
Again, and what's funny is when it first came out, there was a lot of uproar, and I wasn't the biggest fan of it at the time. As I said, when we reviewed it, it's grown on me. And the reason why I say it's essential is you're looking at Who throughout the development of Doctor Who, both the lore of it and the series, there's a lot of connections between the two. It very much is a Classic Who. Now, I can't say Classic Who story, but it's got elements of Classic Who. But it definitely is leading more towards the New Who style of story. There's elements that come out and are developed in New Who. The biggest one, of course, is the kiss. That's the big deal.
Right.
The Doctor kissed her out of excitement, wasn't even really out of passion. But there was, just a lot of things that kind of were developed more coming into New Who. So you can see it. I really see it as the bridge leading to eventually Rose,
Yeah.
It really is a connection between the two of them. And again, looking back, it really is much better. Of course, it also gives us, the Eighth Doctor, who much more developed in Big Finish, as we've started to talk about, as well as the Night of the Doctor, the little Night of the Doctor special, which frankly, that could have been a whole 50th anniversary story, in my opinion. But anyways, it probably should have been. But so yeah, it's the 96 movie is worth watching. It's not worth putting on the shelf and ignoring. Again, it's more as much of to appreciate how Doctor Who developed, especially during that time where it was in hiatus.
Before I get to my next pick, I do want to kind of jump off of something you said, Jimmy, which is that if I was going to drop someone in fresh to Doctor Who, like you said, I wouldn't necessarily drop them in on Rose. In fact, I probably would skip the first 5 episodes of that first season and take them right to Dalek, because I think that's really where it gets good. In fact, when I was introducing my wife Melanie to Doctor Who, that's what I did. Because the right before that is Aliens of London and World War III, and I'm like, she is never going to watch another episode of Doctor Who if I make her sit through those. So once you hit Dalek, that's where that first season hit its stride. But that's not my pick. My pick for the next one is for number 4 is Blink. 10th Doctor episode, obviously, Doctor and Martha Jones, and not necessarily coincidentally another Stephen Moffat story, but I feel like this is nearly a perfect episode of TV, even though the Doctor's largely absent from it, and that makes it seem kind of ironic, but it shows how Doctor Who can work when in that circumstance, how the Doctor's presence off screen really informs the story, and it introduces one of the best villains I think ever created for TV. I mean, the Weeping Angels are clever and interesting, and they kind of overuse them later on and undermine them.
In fairness, this is something that happens with every popular villain. They tend to become
Yes.
less impressive the more you use them.
Exactly. It happens to Star Trek, happens here. But the Weeping Angels here are menacing, terrifying, really great. And I think Sally Sparrow is delightful in this too. So I really like Sally Sparrow. So my pick here is Blink. Jimmy, what's your next pick?
My next pick is Blink. We're in the top 3, and this is a narrow runner-up to my top 2 things to introduce people to Doctor Who with, but it is one that I often will start with. The limitation that Blink has is it's both Doctor Light and Companion Light. So even though you get a sense that this show is about time travel, and we have some really timey-wimey stuff. In fact, this is the episode that introduces the phrase wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Right.
It doesn't give you the full roundedness of what you'd get in a typical episode with the Doctor being the active protagonist, accompanied by a companion. You get a little bit of that here, but really Sally Sparrow is the main protagonist in this. Still, it is such an enjoyable story that I have used it for people. If we've got only 45 minutes to introduce them to Doctor Who, this is one of the things I'll show them.
Excellent. Father Cory?
Well, I want to take a point though, something you said, Dom, that in Blink, the Doctor is off screen. No, this is the most literally the Doctor is on screen.
This is
most
true.
of the episode he is on a TV screen or a DVD player screen. So this is about as literal as on screen as you can get within an episode. But for my next one, I am going to kind of touch on the Timeless Child one for the next one, but it's the introduction of Ruth Doctor or Dr. Ruth, however you want to put it, Fugitive of Jejune. And I think we kind of agreed it was an enjoyable episode on its own. The Jejune actually were done well in this, unlike their previous incarnations, shall we say. But then, of course, we see, we get Dr. Ruth. We get this great character. Very much, she definitely held herself as the Doctor.
She was more interesting than Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
Right.
We actually liked her better as the Doctor than Jodie Whittaker, which kind of makes you wonder if they kind of went, we kind of messed up there. But
right.
But it does introduce what later became known as the Timeless Child. And I think depending on how they play it, it can have much more serious aspect for the future of the series, because the idea of the Timeless Child is not just that the Doctor has more regenerations we know about, but that the Doctor is actually where the Time Lords came from ultimately.
Right.
That the Doctor is so important in the history of the Time Lords that without the Doctor, there would not be the Time Lords. But it's going to be interesting to see in next season coming in over a year, supposedly, we don't even know when, how they are going to play that, or is it going to be one of these story arcs that then they just leave out there and drop, like so many of the Stephen Moffat story arcs where they were out there, they got resolved, and they were done. So
yeah.
But I think it's going to have further ramifications that Chris Chibnall's going to play with.
As do I.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
But I want my 4 audio play Big Finish Doctor Ruth set now.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice,
no, I mean she
yes.
was just fantastic, and I think there's stuff there that can be explored with Big Finish, as far as it's pretty clear Dr. Ruth is the Doctor's memory, pre-Hartnell. So that means there's a lot there they can explore and have fun with, and I think that could be a great potential for Big Finish to pick up eventually. So
Excellent. My next one is, this is bound to be a little controversial because this is not, I wouldn't pick this as the best Doctor Who of the 12th Doctor era, but I wanted one from that era. And I think this one qualifies because Magician's Apprentice and Witch's Familiar, I'm picking it's as a pair, it's a 2-parter, because it's Missy in full. And Missy to me is the most delightful Doctor Who villain I've ever encountered for myself. I mean, I love Missy. She's the best. And she really is at her peak in this episode. And the 12th Doctor here hits his stride as well. That messiness of his first season is kind of gone. That personality messiness is not gone, faded, shall we say. The edges have been rounded off a bit. Clara has reached peak companion. I've liked Clara, especially given the loss of Danny Pink at the end of the previous season. And we're about to see Clara's resolution arc come through in this season. And so this is the beginning of that. We have the return of Davros and Skaro. We have the temptation of the Doctor once again. This sort of temptation of in the desert style temptation where I will give you all this power to do good. Just have to take it from me, the evil king, the origin of the Daleks. And it's really, I really enjoy that. So I like these two episodes together as being somewhat essential for understanding the complete Doctor. So Jimmy, what's your next one?
Moving up to number 2, I have Midnight. Midnight is, I often actually show it to people after I show them Blink, but it's another one that if we only have 45 minutes, I could use this to introduce someone to Doctor Who. Blink has the disadvantages we mentioned of it's Doctor Light and Companion Light. Well, Midnight is Companion Light because Donna is only in the opening and closing scenes, but it's not Doctor Light. It's Doctor Focused. And he really has companions in this because he's trapped on the bus and on the space bus, and everybody else on the bus are effectively his companions for this episode. We have this terrifying thing that even though we survive it, there's still mystery left in the air about it. So you kind of have the best of both worlds, You have wonder that remains as well as dramatic tension that gets resolved. And the character studies of the individual characters on the bus and how they all have very different personalities and motives, and they're interacting in ways that are very character-based. And it's just really well written. And even though I like Stephen Moffat better as a writer than Russell T Davies, this episode by Russell T Davies, in terms of raw enjoyment for me, slightly edges out Blink. And so I would put this at the number 2 slot, but it's still not my number 1.
Okay. Father Cory?
So for my next one, I'm going with probably about the most Doctor Light episode you can have, and that's Turn Left. This is Donna Noble.
Yep.
This is a story I've always kind of enjoyed because I found it interesting to think about what would the Doctor universe look like if the Doctor actually died? And before Donna even got to meet him, and because of, a choice that she had made, turning left instead of turning right, where everything didn't fall in place and the Doctor ended up dying during the Runaway Bride event. So I think it's very interesting because you get to see Donna's character develop even without the Doctor there, where she has to be strong and she has to face all these things that are going on in their lives as the world is literally falling apart. All these alien invasions that the Doctor was able to stop, he wasn't there to stop.
Right.
And of course, then we see Rose coming in and trying to find him and trying to find out what's going on. And of course, it even for being seemingly kind of a standalone alternate universe episode, it actually plays into the story arc of that whole season. It just didn't seem like it at the time until you look back at it and see that no, these are all events that kind of play together.
Right.
Again, it's a very interesting concept in Who, especially for alternate universe.
Father, what's that on your back?
Yeah, exactly. What? There's nothing there. I don't see anything. Yeah,
good.
it does have the giant time sucking
Beetle.
Time beetles.
beetle, but
yeah.
But it I think it really is an interesting concept, an interesting story.
So I guess that brings it around to me, and I'm going to pick one. So we've gone from Dr. Light to Dr. Heavy, which is, I think, Day of the Doctor is another essential for New Who. And this because it brings together 3 Doctors, 2 we're familiar with, and a third one who's brand new. So we have the 10th, the 11th, and the War Doctor played by John Hurt. This was the 50th anniversary special, and it was so well done. It brings together. It really jumps back into the mythology of the Time Lords and of the Time War that was introduced with the Return of New Who. So it really kind of delves into what happened there. What did the Doctor experience? Not delves into, but touches on really what happened to the Doctor in the Time War. It was introduced by that one, the Eighth Doctor mini episode that you mentioned, Father Cory, which was the Night of the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Really enjoyed this one, and I think it really plays out how did when you have the multiple Doctor episodes of the Classic Who, it really plays out how the different Doctors are different from each other, and I think this does this for New Who, this encounter, and it's so far the only. Well, it's not. I guess technically it's not the only multiple Doctor episode in New Who because we've had, as you mentioned, Doctor Ruth, but really multiple Doctors that we're familiar with.
Time Crash.
Oh, right. I mean, it's not. I guess I forgot it because it's not a regular episode, but it is a mini episode which has the Fifth Doctor and the 10th Doctor. So you're right. You're right. It's not the only one.
Definitely to my money, the funnest of the multi-Doctor stories.
Right, especially when you understand the background behind things as well.
Yeah.
So, but my number 2 would be Day of the Doctor, and of course it ends with Tom Baker's cameo, so that makes it even more special. Jimmy, what's your number 1 when we get to it?
Oh, who knows? Who knows? Actually, if I have more than 45 minutes to introduce someone to Doctor Who, if I can show them a couple of episodes, I will show them the 2-parter Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
This one is neither Doctor Light nor Companion Light because you have the Doctor and Donna together throughout all of the 2 parts. You have Going to Another Planet. You have horror in the form of the Vashta-Narada. You have a really creepy, effectively done horror with, hey, who turned out the lights? And
yes,
Donna Noble has been saved. Donna Noble has been saved. And reality bending stuff with the children for once, there are, even though in general, anytime there's a holodeck, my interest goes down, it can be played well.
Mm-hmm.
And here in the visionary world that Donna goes to, it is played well because we're not sure what's happening to her when she's at the hospital with Dr. Moon, and he's clearly manipulating her and events, but we're not sure why. And the disfigured Miss Evangelista shows up in a veil and is pulling back the curtain to help Donna realize she's in a simulated reality and all of the children are the same, and she's advancing through time in a dreamlike way, not in a realistic way. And then we have Cal, the little girl, who is dealing with her own problems, and Dr. Moon is there too somehow. And of course, we have the introduction, the hail and the farewell of River Song.
right.
And so, and the even after River has sacrificed herself, we have the desperate, effort to save her in some form, which then happens. And even though it's an Easter egg that wasn't revealed until just this year, we have Dr. Moon as the final incarnation of the Doctor. If I have time to introduce somebody to Doctor Who with more than one episode, this is what I'll show them.
Father Cory?
So from the last one, of course, I didn't do obviously this in kind of a strict, 10-1 ranking. It was kind of hard to come up with that. So that's why I did more Classic Who into New Who.
Mm-hmm.
But the last one I would pick is Utopia. This is the one where it's like the far, far last dredges of humanity. The universe is dying, and we get the Master back. This is where the Master first shows up in New Who. I wish Derek Jacobi's Master would have stuck around more than about 5 minutes.
I know.
Because I liked him so much better than John Sim as the Master.
Fortunately, there are the Big Finish War Master series starring Derek Jacobi. There's 3 or 4 volumes of that now.
That's the one I'll have to. That's another one of those. In all this money I make as a priest, ha ha ha.
Yeah. and his master in those series is true to what we see on screen. He is more charming and sedate in a certain way, and can even be good. One of the stories is titled "The Good Master."
Yep.
But then he'll turn ruthless.
Yeah.
And so it's a mix of the good and the bad. You can see the progression towards Missy
Right.
being able to be both good and bad and ultimately redeemed.
I mean, if you want, you can move on to Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords if you want to see that whole story arc complete, because it is really a three-parter, even though it's
Yeah.
it's considered a two-parter. Utopia is really kind of like the prequel to the two-parter, so it's really a three-parter. Interestingly, both Turn Left and Utopia have the same actress. The palm reader in Turn Left is also Chanthro, the assistant in
Yeah.
Oh.
Utopia.
Yep.
So that's kind of weird connection I was thinking about. I realized as I'm sitting here doing this, but it's it was great to see that reintroduction of the master. And again, just that few minutes that Derek Jacobi is the master is just awesome. So
Right. Excellent. Well, for my last regular pick is Jimmy. It's the same one: Silence in the Library, Forest and the Dead. I agree. If I had to sit someone down for one two-parter, that would be the one for the same reasons that you mentioned. I also like the fact that it's another story of the Doctor confronted with an impossible choice. You know, he has to make a choice that it just seems, how can you possibly choose? He's essentially outwitted at nearly every turn in this one. You know, every time he thinks he's got the answer, he doesn't. It has an unexpected resolution. It has the interaction with River Song. So awesome in all those ways. One thing I was noticing as we made our picks is we've essentially, for the New Who picks, the series 4, season 4 of the New Who, we've picked 4 episodes out of that, which is kind of interesting. How that Donna Noble season really seems to be, have been a real key season for Doctor Who. So that's I thought that was very interesting. So since you picked Silence in the Library and Force the Dead, I'm going to pick a bonus pick, and this one is going to be a pick just because it satisfies one of my bones I want to pick with New Who, which is I want to pick the Reign of Terror from the first Doctor because it's an awesome pure historical, even though it only exists in the audio form now. But I really enjoyed listening to that, and I really think it shows how pure historicals can work with Doctor Who, and they really ought to do those more in the future.
Well, I'll be interested to see if once you've had a chance to hear Marco Polo and the Romans, if you move one of them into that bonus slot.
That is a provisional slot because I haven't heard all of the pure historicals yet. All right, that's awesome. So I want to close things out, but first, before we do that, I want to kind of talk a little bit about the future of the Secrets of Doctor Who. We've done 200 episodes. We are not done by any means.
Not by a long shot.
Not by a long shot. There is a whole lot of classic Doctor Who that we still need to go through. We're still working our way through a rewatch of New Who. We're only up to the 11th Doctor. Once we get to the end of the 11th Doctor, we will have finished our watch, and we got to decide what we're going to do from there. Maybe we'll rewatch the 12th Doctor because by then it will have been 8 or 10 years since it was on. And we're definitely delving into the other media as well. The Big Finish productions are definitely worthy of the sort of treatment that we're giving the TV shows. And in fact, we're already doing that with the 8th Doctor. So there's a lot of Secrets of Doctor Who left. So once we get to 300 and 400, we're going to have to figure out something else we can do for a special celebration.
Least essential episodes?
the most forgettable episodes of Doctor Who.
Oh, that would be fun. Just a rant episode.
We could. That would be interesting. But until then, I do want to encourage the listener. What are your essential episodes? What do you think is the best out there? What do you think is the sort of thing that can't be missed? And what do you think of our listings? In a second, I'll give you how to contact us with that information. But before we do, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Jonathan H., Scott E., David G., Jeffrey K., and Jesse W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give and ensure we make it to episode 300. We also want to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. And a special thanks to you, the listener. Without you as a listener and subscriber to the show, we wouldn't be doing this. So we are very grateful to you. Let us know what you think of our 10 essential stories of Doctor Who and what your essential stories of Doctor Who are by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the second Doctor story, The Faceless Ones, which is newly available as an animated episode. So we'll be back talking about that soon. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, we're just getting started.
Right. This is going to be fun.